Some people like Bing, good for them, like 10%, 15% of people.
But, you know, well, you want to know the reality about Bing?
DuckDuckGo or whatever.
The only reason people use Bing is because it's the default. You know, when you're clicking in the browser of Explorer, or whatever it is.
I know, but I haven't been in the Explorer for a long time, so I'm not sure. But
I know some people like Bing.
You know, I mean, there's some people like Apple Maps, like we talked about.
Well, dude, here's the crazy thing about Bing. Like we joke about it, but Bing makes like $10 billion a year, right?
Welcome to another episode. No investment advice. You got Trung and I was about to say Trung and Jack. Trung and Bilal. Jack is unfortunately not able to join. He has a last minute thing. And a heads up, we have to be transparent. Today is a double record pod, so me and Trung are smashing it out. I'll be traveling, and then fingers crossed, in a couple of weeks, you two will be recording without me. So it'll be a few weeks before the full gang is there together.
Well,
but let's get it going, man. Yeah.
Before we talk about what we're going to talk about, well, let's just say today's an antitrust episode. Meta's trial started to potentially break up Meta, unwind Instagram and WhatsApp acquisition, which is insane when you think about it. And Google took another antitrust L last year. Bilal's former employer, but no longer employed by there. Just like, let's just cut the link there. Last year, their search business was deemed a monopoly. And now, last week, the ad exchange part of their business, which Bilal's going to break down. This is his wheelhouse. There's tying anti-competitive time between the ad exchange and the publisher tools from DoubleClick. If you know what those words mean, you're brighter than me on this topic. Bilal will break it down.
I might not be that much bright. I'll try my best. But yeah, let's talk about that as well.
I wanted the listeners to get an insight into the most Bilal NIA thing ever. Right before this chat went on, he says, I've been drinking too much caffeine. Can you explain what's going on here? Are you shaking?
Shot. No.
Like, what time are you having these?
No, fairly early. Before 11 o'clock. Before 11 o'clock is the triple shot. Then I've been going my long walks. The weather's been nice. I've just been getting that buzz, you know, when you're just buzzing off the caffeine, the sun's hitting you. You just
show me your buzz hands again.
Yeah, just
what's the buzz
shaking.
Hands?
It's just you're shaking a little bit, not too much, but just enough, just to know you're alive. You know what I mean? And then you got to take the AirPods out. You got to take in the sounds of the birds, the park.
Dude, you sound like the Johnny Cash "Hurt" song. I hurt myself today just to see if I still feel. Just to feel.
That's a different sort of feel.
Well, dude, that's me, right? I had 3 sugar-free Red Bulls just to make sure I was still. No, but
at least you're on the sugar-free, because that stuff will give you the sugar high too.
Have you been upping your caffeine consumption?
No, I will. I'm normally pretty aware of it because I try not to go over too much. But then I go to the gym normally in the afternoon, and then you need a little caffeine before the gym, obviously, right? Because that's pretty. If anyone's bought pre-workout, like which I know you do, and you use pre-workout. All pre-workout pretty much is just caffeine. Like there are some other stimulants they have.
There's was it arginine? Some other
There's also
caffeine, right?
I've got this here, lion's mane. I don't want to promote stuff on the pod, but that's a more of a natural one. So if you buy one of those products, they're just mixing caffeine and stimulants.
Let me give you a name. Have you ever tried Hydroxycut?
Oh,
dude,
that sounds intense.
It was like back in when bodybuilding.com. You ever go to bodybuilding? Oh yeah, I
remember the forums.
Legendary forums.
Did you used to go on the forum too? Yeah.
All the time. I mean, I didn't participate, but I read because like in your teens, you got like your body image problems. You start reading about like high intensity interval training and like you look at people's the amount of protein they're eating. It was like, chicken breast has to be the size of your fist 4 times a day. That whole thing. Hydroxycut was the one they were shilling really hard back then.
Oh, back in the day, yeah.
But like to your point, I remember buying it for high school. I took it once and I could not function. I went into class on Hydroxycut, but it's to your point, it's like pure caffeine. But yeah, dude, hysterical. I hope 3 is working for you, that you don't have to, that you haven't
slow it down in the afternoon.
No, but I'm I hope you're not turning yourself where on the treadmill here where you got to start doing 4 and 5. But yeah, whatever. If you do, you're good.
No, I'm cutting it down. But the problem is, as it gets warm, I switch to cold brew. And the cold brew is even stronger.
It hits hard because you drink it faster
any
too.
Cold drinks as well. You just down in them. So anyway, let's get on to the topic. So we're going to talk about Meta, Google. We do have some stuff on ChatGPT, adding memory, and some AI stuff. There's a lot of OpenAI also buying Windsurf for $3 billion. There's a lot. on the AI side. We probably
Let's
could
get
have
into the
honestly
meta
done a whole
antitrust.
episode, but
Yeah.
let's start with that. And actually, before we do that, the meme of the week, it's not even a full meme. OpenAI CEO Sam Altman reveals that users saying please and thank you to ChatGPT is costing the company tens of millions of dollars in electricity costs. Trung, are you that polite to your AI when you're talking to it? Just in case.
Dude, I'm Canadian, so the answer is yes. I say please, and no, I'm seriously. I say please for everything.
Yeah, and I'm English, so we say sorry when we bump into something. Like when someone bumps into us.
Oh, sorry.
All right, but let's get to Meta. So what's going on?
All right, so Zuck Daddy Flex in 2020. This is actually under the Trump administration, the previous one. They brought an antitrust suit against Facebook. You have to remember 4 years ago, or I guess at this point 5 years ago, before Zuck was on the dais at the inauguration, looking at Bezos's fiance's chest area, getting busted for it. Before he was doing that, him and Trump had a pretty big feud, right? Trump even said, I think during the elections, I want to put Zuck in jail for what he did during 2020, is basically deplatforming me. And anyways, that's happening. And we know since then, in the past, since Trump won the election, Zuck did the pivot where he said, we're getting rid of fact checkers.
Put Dana White on the board.
Yeah, put Dana White on the board. Donated $1 million to the Trump campaign, settled with the Trump in a lawsuit for 25 mil. So like clearly pivoting, some would say to the center from where Facebook and he was before, like very much supporting the Democratic Party. Some would say he's just fully trying to win favor with the Trump administration to specifically get this antitrust trial, like not even to go to court. Because there's a bombshell article from the Wall Street Journal last week that these are some crazy numbers, dude. So do you know when you go on Craigslist and let me ask you, when you offer to buy something on Craigslist, what's the first thing you do?
I mean, I haven't done this for many years, so I'm trying to think.
What do you do? You send in the biggest piece of shit offer ever.
Oh yeah, yeah. Like, you're anchoring it. You're doing the Trump art of the deal, right?
Come on, like you'll see a used pair of Jordans.
300% tariffs. That's what you're saying.
Or like let's say the Jordans are listed 250 Air Jordan 11s.
72. Like be more. If you say specific numbers, like you calculated it, anchor it down.
You'll be like, you know the best I can do is $83. I looked at some comps. I'll do 83 for the 250, and like. The guy will be so offended that, sometimes you can just get a reply from the guy on Craigslist and be like, fuck you. It's like, you're not even being serious, right?
Fair play.
So right now, this Meta antitrust trial, the gist of it is that Meta has a monopoly in what's called personal networking services. Personal social networking services. Now, we're going to talk about why this case actually is probably unlikely to win. And it has to do with the definition of the market they've put Meta in. And it's difficult because in antitrust, to prove monopoly, the first thing you have to do is prove what market are you playing in, right? So Bilal, I'm going to ask you, if you're the United States government, the Federal Trade Commission, and you're bringing this case against Meta, and you're saying that they have a monopoly in personal social networking services, what would the competitors be in that category? Personal social networking services.
That's a good point. So personal is probably, isn't it? You're saying not including Meta, or you're saying including?
Like who is Facebook?
Like WhatsApp, would WhatsApp be included here or not?
Yeah, throw them out.
Yeah, I mean WhatsApp definitely, Instagram, Facebook, they own all three of those. Messenger, Facebook, obviously. Then outside of that, I mean size-wise, probably is like what? Oh, Instagram as well, because that's DM's actually a big thing.
Who are the competitors? Who are the competing?
Snapchat, Twitter, YouTube. I don't even think really counts actually. But who else is there? iMessage, does that even count?
Would you count TikTok? Does TikTok count?
Yeah, TikTok kind of, but it's not really messaging as much.
Okay, you're nailing the point. That definition, personal social networking services, sounds ominous. You just listed it. It sounds like they own all the billion-person apps that really matter, other than TikTok, right? Even Twitter, you're not competing with that size. So, do you want to know what
Snapchat
the official...
Too, it is very much about DMs essentially, but it's way smaller.
Snapchat, a $10 billion company, right? Facebook, $1 trillion plus. Do you know who they say that Facebook's competing with? Snap is one of them. The other one is a company called MeWe. Have you ever heard of MeWe?
I don't even know what that is.
There you go. There's
Are
the
they
main
from
problem.
another country or what?
It's a company in America. It basically does not take your data. Says it's a whole privacy framing. Claims to have 30 million users. But I've actually logged onto it in the past. It seems to me that the network's largely dead, and it has picked up users. You remember when Trump was deplatformed, everyone went to Parler, or a lot of conservatives went to Parler.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so MeWe picked up a lot of conservatives when Trump was deplatformed after January 6th. But then since then, I've read people that have been on there recently. There's like no activity on the website. Also, they picked up some users during the Hong Kong protests when China was deplatforming or blocking people from social networks. But more or less, the whole point I'm trying to make is the government has brought a case against Facebook. And it's the problem with a lot of these antitrust cases is they kind of come too late in the sense of this should have been brought a decade ago, right?
Yeah.
So like their goal here is to ultimately have Instagram and WhatsApp spun off. Instagram was acquired in 2012 for $1 billion, and then WhatsApp was acquired in 2014 for $19 billion. And this comes to the other part of why this case is difficult. And well, let me circle the Craigslist analogy I was making. Last week, it came out in the Wall Street Journal that Zuck was negotiating with FTC to settle this case. Did not want to go to trial because he goes to trial, he has sit on a stand. A lot of juicy details come out, and they did come out. A lot of juicy details, which we'll cover shortly. But he offered them $450 million to settle the entire trial, where the risk of having Instagram or WhatsApp spun off was zero if they just settled it. The FTC is like, actually, we think the damage is that you have to pay $30 billion. So I want you. So Zuck offered $450 million for 30. That was a low ball.
Sounds like sounds like the Jordan offer you said,
yeah,
right?
exactly,
more,
right?
yeah.
So a lot of people are just like, it looks like Zuck's like cozying up to the Trump administration, even having a new global head of comms, which is a former Republican, like a very well-known Republican mover and shaker in the party. Just didn't work. This still went to trial. And it goes back to the overarching theme on this entire episode about antitrust is like, what is the point of antitrust? When the most famous in American history, probably other than Microsoft in the late 90s, that's more relevant now, but like when the Sherman Antitrust Act happened in the early 1900s under Teddy Roosevelt's administration, and famously took on Standard Oil, broke up Standard Oil, the most valuable company in the world at the time, broke it up into what is now like 20 companies, including, as we all know, Exxon is a former Standard Oil company, and almost every major oil company today in America, they have a link to Standard Oil. But the point is, Teddy Roosevelt wanted to break up a large private company for the same reason that the U.S. government is set up the way it is, right? Legislative branch, executive branch, judicial branch are supposed to have equal powers. If you have a concentration of power anywhere, it's got a risk to the American Republic system. That's the entire point, right? They didn't want to have a king, but if you have someone like Rockefeller, the richest man in the world at the time, that is now a concentration of wealth. And now we're seeing that in the last decade. Obviously you look at the top 10 richest people in the world list, same deal going on. It's like there's that concern. Does that resonate with you? It's like that's the kind of the philosophical
that's the crux
history.
of it. That makes sense. But so a lot of this is obviously about monopoly power, though, right? So, but in this example, you're saying these two competitors that don't feel that real competitor. So what's the case like alleging, basically?
It's basically saying that Facebook is squashing competition and not allowing other alternatives. Their whole case is, you've kind of alluded to is like, actually, it's literally one click away, right? It's like they have power, but there are alternatives. Yeah. And I think what I'm trying to think is like, certainly you can bring a case against Facebook. Certainly they have abused their power in some capacity. But is it the way that they're framing it? That's always a challenge, right? And let me ask you this, is like, do you think that Instagram and WhatsApp should be spun off based on the following? Did a single person at the time these things were acquired think that they were true competitors? I mean, I think that's the challenge here.
That's a good point. You're saying when Instagram was acquired,
yeah,
right?
Dude. Yeah, what was your opinion?
I remember if you take us back at 2012. I remember what did everyone say? They're like, "Why are they buying them for this much?"
This is crazy. People thought
they
this
were
was
like,
crazy.
"All this is an app with filters. Doesn't make sense because people didn't see the vision."
10 employees, 10
Fair
million users on the app. Not a lot of revenue to speak of. Facebook used about half their cash on their balance sheet at the time. This was also months before their IPO. So people were like, what is going on? It's like, in fact, people were saying at the time, this is
it's an incredibly smart acquisition in reality.
Exactly.
Right?
But like, what's interesting? So I'm curious about that. Is like, do I think Meta and Zuck and Facebook are innocent of all charges? Of course not. I think as powerful as they are, clearly the network effects are so powerful. But I think this case specifically is quite weak because of how difficult it is to nail down the personal social networking services. Me, we, and Snap are the challengers. Like, that's just not a credible case to bring, right?
Yeah, I guess, Trung, the other point is, would Instagram be what it is without Facebook having acquired them back then? To me, definitely not.
I don't think
they were on a rocket ship, but nowhere near like this. And I would say the same for YouTube.
With Google.
Yeah, and so I guess that's the question is like, what is the line between, in this scenario, Kevin Systrom got a great payout. The early employees got a great payout. They didn't get forced into selling it, though we have seen some emails that are floated around, like the famous emails of Mark Zuckerberg being like, basically just go and get these guys, and it seems very aggressive the way he's
Basically, the argument is we need to squish the competition.
And that doesn't look good, obviously, right? And that's obviously was his intention, it seems. And I guess the question is like, if you're in that position, one point of view is, well, you just did a really good, smart thing to buy something when it was only, would you say 10 million users? Is that
10 million users. Wow. And like 12 employees. It was crazy, dude. It's a crazy bet. He did try to snuff out a competitor. There's no question about it.
Yeah.
But the question becomes, are large companies not allowed to buy small companies at all? Right? It's like there's no.
Yeah, that's the whole mergers acquisition market is essentially that. So there is obviously a legal line around. So I would see it as, what's the intent? So in here, obviously the intent probably was to, you could say, squash the competition, or you could say to add to their portfolio that's going to keep growing. Right. And to make them better, give them infrastructure, give them cross-sell to users, which is kind of what happened. And then, so I don't know. I mean, I think it gets murky when you see emails and they're saying, like, let's buy these at all costs, or like, let's basically bully them into a corner. That's what you don't want. That's not fair competition. So I don't know the details.
Well, I'll give you an example. The alternative we have to your question is like, could Instagram have become what it is? I mean, I believe its value now, if you take its share of Facebook's revenue, and it's scoring faster, right? Because the Facebook Blue app is like, we know it's like shrimp Jesus for uncles and aunts, right? And it's just like AI slop central, but like it's like $500 billion, right? It's like worth half of Meta's entire business.
It's crazy.
It's crazy, right?
But Trung, can I say
YouTube, right? YouTube is a similar. I mean, YouTube. Well, it's not half, but like it was worth about $500 million. But I just want to bring up the point is like the alternative history is Snap, right? The emails that came out was Zuck tried to buy Snap. People knew about this, but the emails that came out were incredible. I want to point people to internal tech emails. It's a Substack. They had the entire exchange of Zuck negotiating with Evan Spiegel. It's crazy. I'll give you the TLDR. Zuck offered $3 billion. He was a bit concerned that the Instagram guys, this was about in 2013, so after they're already a public company, he was concerned that the Instagram guys would be maybe not necessarily jealous, but like, they're like, oh, you're going to bring in Evan Spiegel? You just brought in Instagram. Like, what's going on here, right? And then Evan Spiegel came back, part negotiating, part maybe he believed it. He's like, I believe that this could be a $10 billion company. Sounds like a negotiation. Zuck, in the email came back, he's like, I think I'm willing to go up to 6. And so like they're willing to pay $6 billion, which has been, dude, if you think people lost their mind at Instagram at $1 billion, can you imagine on Snap at $6 billion at that time? It's right now, dude, with the funny money we've had in the past decade, it doesn't seem that crazy, but it was crazy back then. But the TLDR was this. Snap obviously stayed private, went public. It's Snapchat as a public company has been dead money for a decade. Dead money. If you put $1 into Snapchat's IPO, I think you're
like Ethereum, basically.
Yeah. It's dead money. Well, yeah, in the past decade, right? Or
the
past
last 5
years.
Well, also, Trung, but people forget how many things, like even I just forgot until I just thought of it now. Like stories on Instagram came from them duplicating, from Snapchat. Like even now, once in a while I log into Snapchat. I sound so old saying this, and every time I'm like, I don't even know where to go. Like I'm already too old. Yeah, so I don't even know what I'm supposed to be doing.
Well, dude, You brought it up. Here's a funny thing. This is Evan Spiegel's LinkedIn profile. Why don't you read it out for listeners? Bottom, what I underlined. Evan Spiegel, CEO of Snap. This is his LinkedIn profile for the listeners.
Oh, this is incredible.
Read this. Read it.
This should be meme of the week, to be honest.
Read the about section. What does it say?
Loving husband, father of 4 boys, VP of product at Meta. That's fantastic.
Yeah, so there you go. So like, basically, Meta famously ganked stories from Snap, and that's, to me, that's fair play, right? It's like and also every single social network today is the exact same. They're all becoming TikTok, right? These things all converge ultimately. But the other thing I wanted to bring up about the VP, he also glasses. Remember the spectacles?
Yeah, they were one of the first to do that.
There's just no way they can compete with Zuck's money train on that. But anyways, the TLDR in this case is I think certainly you can look at Meta and the way they've operated their business, very aggressive. Whether or not it's anti-competitive, I think it's difficult in this case because you're trying to unwind deals that are done a decade ago that no one thought at the time were going to work. Literally no one. I mean, I'll tell you, I got to agree with one person is Gary Vee went on CNN or CNBC in like 2011. He's like, this is the greatest deal ever. So I'll give him his.
He's actually been, especially social stuff, he was very good at. I mean, he's definitely been ahead of the curve on a lot of that. One thing you mentioned I want to bring back to, is going to bring us into the next topic on Google antitrust, is you said, well, they're just one click away, right? And that is a very good point. I'd say even more so specifically for Google search, because there's no, that is you literally just choosing, or by default in a lot of cases, that's what you're used to using. It's a default search engine on multiple browsers and stuff like that. The difference is comparing that to the social network. Social network has value because you have friends on there. It used to be anyway. Now most of it isn't even your friends, but it used to be Facebook because all your friends are there. You're not going to now move to Friendster or High Five or MySpace where that network isn't there.
The network effect is real.
Key, is real. Whereas like a search engine specifically, I know we're going to talk about ad exchange and digital ads and stuff. To me, that to me is the best argument for search specifically, is that you're using it because you think is better in most cases, or you don't even think about it as like there's an alternative. Obviously there's Bing. Some people like Bing, good for them, like 10%, 15% of people.
But well, you want to know the reality about Bing?
DuckDuckGo or whatever.
The only reason people use Bing is because it's the default. When you're clicking in the browser of Explorer, you think or whatever it is.
I know, but I haven't been in the Explorer for a long time, so I'm not sure. But
I know some people like Bing.
I mean, there's some people at Apple Maps, like we talked about.
Well, dude, here's the crazy thing about Bing. Like we joke about it, but Bing makes like $10 billion a year.
That's the crazy thing. I remember, and I don't agree with this, but I remember at 2010 or 11, Eric Schmidt came and gave a talk when I was there, and someone, I think I even submitted the question about Facebook, but I think it was one of those where people vote on it and it gets asked in the town hall or whatever, and there was basically saying like, what do you guys think of Facebook's growing crazy? What do you think of them as a competitor? And people now, obviously, Meta became the big competitor, right? Like that makes sense. At the time, his answer was, in the immediate term, Bing is a bigger worry to us, which is obviously
he said that.
Because if you think about their direct revenue at the time, it was 90% search, and just losing 1% of that to Bing actually makes a huge difference. And so obviously long term that isn't the case. Obviously Meta
I mean, you're right. If you're doing $100-200 billion, literally 1% is massive, right?
Makes a massive
very
difference.
Material.
I did think it was a bit of a deflection, but you know what I mean.
Great.
Do you want to talk about the ad exchange?
Let's talk about Google.
What did you want to talk about?
I love that Bilal had the inside baseball, a former Google employee. Okay, so let me
once
just
a
read,
week, gotta get it in.
Yeah, I know, right? We've been pretty good on that, right? All right, so Google loses ad tech monopoly cases is The Verge. I'll just read through the details here, top level. The U.S. Proved Google, and I'm putting in quotes, willfully engaged in a series of anti-competitive acts. And here is the first 2 paragraphs of this. Bilal is going to tease this out for us because do understand what's going on with Google's ad market, which is very important because last year, as we kind of mentioned up top, Google's search business in a different case. I mean, Google's just getting slapped right now, bro. And I'll tell you what's funny.
Hit for a long time, man.
Remember how we talked about Meta? Yeah, back to back. We're talking about Meta, how it's difficult, the timing of these antitrust cases to come together, right? Although I guess Meta, like within 4 or 5 years, not the slowest thing ever. But the thing about Google is Google's getting hit now with these cases as AI and chat and OpenAI, as we're talking about shortly, just eating their lunch in a lot of ways, right? OpenAI is at 800 million users now.
Crazy.
And clearly the chat paradigm is the new search.
Yeah, I saw the chart for that. It's crazy.
It's crazy,
I do think
right?
they're going to shoehorn it into other products that their numbers will eventually inflate. Obviously,
Google.
there are people that are using it for development and stuff like that. And they're actually doing really well on the, there's the scores that they do every month or whatever.
Like
and even on
chat
Polymarket.
The AI you're talking about Gemini.
Google Gemini is doing pretty well for some of those things. But in terms of users, active,
it's unbelievable.
I mean, ChatGPT, which
we'll get into that.
later.
Yeah, that's a very important part of this. I like how this is all segueing people. This is what happens when you have 3 espressos in the morning, like Bilal did.
There we go.
The U.S. Department of Justice, is back to The Verge, has won its antitrust case against Google, which accused the company of operating monopoly in the advertising technology industry. The ruling, which marks Google's most recent antitrust loss following its search case, says the tech giant's anti-competitive practices in 2 key markets substantially harm publishers and users on the web. And I'll finish here with the exact legalese from the judge. So U.S. District Judge Leonie Brinkema writes, plaintiffs have proven that Google has willfully engaged in a series of anti-competitive acts to acquire and maintain monopoly power in the publisher, ad server, and exchange markets for open web display advertising. For over a decade, Google has tied up its publisher, ad server, and ad exchange together through contractual policies and technological integration, which enables them to establish and protect its monopoly power in 2 markets. So let me get to this quickly. Blah. Can you explain the difference between the ad server and the ad exchange market? Maybe start with the ad exchange because you had mentioned that beforehand.
Yeah, so ad exchange, think of ad exchange kind of like a stock market for like a buy and sell 2-way marketplace for ads. So we all obviously know about stocks, listen to
and
the
these
pod.
are display ads, is this right? Display ads
display
on like you go to
ads,
websites.
video ads, basically,
Okay.
What is called the Google Display Network and other kind of networks as well. It's basically that. Think of like any ad on the internet that isn't obviously on, Facebook
apps.
and stuff like that.
Yeah,
so
apps or
websites.
Netflix running.
A lot of
Amazon,
people listen to this might have heard of back in the day AdSense, right? Like that was one of the first ad networks where if you had a blog, trungsblog.com, you just put in a snippet of code and it will start showing ads, and if you get clicks, you'll get paid cost per click. Then that's a very simplistic way. Technically, that is still part of what is called Google Display Network, or in this case, Ad Exchange. So just think of that as a 2-way marketplace. You've all been on an order book. If you listen to this, you're buying and selling, Trump coin or whatever the hell people been bidding in the last few months. There's a buy and sell. So it's the same here. You're saying as an advertiser, I want to buy inventory. And there's a publisher who says, I'm willing to sell this inventory. Obviously, you're not doing that manually though, right? It's done by a bid and then an algorithm. And so
there's like an interface you would go to, right?
Yeah,
there's
you go to Innovate. You literally log in. Now, I honestly don't even use that, but a lot of people are even getting exposed to that inventory if you're buying stuff in Google Ads, because YouTube technically I think is also a part of it as inventory as well. But we don't have to go into all the details, but the reason people use it is because there's specific things you can do on there that's a lot more advanced. So if you think of like Pepsi or L'Oreal or Uber or like someone who's really advanced, Booking.com, and they want to like really hone in their ads, it's a very scientific process. They have things like real-time bidding is one of the big key, like the phrases you'll hear a lot of, very specific types of targeting. So you could say, change my, think of like a billboard, but a billboard that changes. That's basically what banner ads and video ads are. Change this based on what the weather is outside in New York. So for this person,
like
here,
legit. It's like if it's raining in New York.
Yeah, very specific stuff like that.
What
like
you
can bring in different signals, basically.
What are you hitting someone with when it's raining in New York?
I mean, you might have a bit more of a cozy mood. You know what I mean? You might change the music.
You want tomato soup. Send the
Exactly.
tomato soup ads around.
Exactly. But yeah, so it's this whole area. It was called programmatic buying. I don't know if they still use the same phrase, but originally they bought a company called DoubleClick. That was one big company. They also bought a company called Invite Media. I actually used to live in the same, like, a little apartment building. There's only three of us with one of the founders, Michael.
Oh, that's awesome.
And
No,
so they
DoubleClick
just
is
all, yeah, it's all
DoubleClick
in
is
that
quite a
world.
legendary deal for them too. 2007 for
Incredible
3 bill.
buy.
So that was not long after YouTube actually, and I mean those two deals that created their empire, right? Like, or built up on top of the
Yeah,
search
YouTube
empire,
and that,
locked it in.
definitely. 100%.
Well, okay, so you kind of explain like this ad exchange market. Now, can you explain what the publisher tools are? Like,
Exactly.
what is
So, yeah.
DoubleClick for publishers?
Yeah, so, and honestly, they've changed all the names since I was there, so I don't even remember. There's so, if you go on their website, there's probably like multiple products, like, you know, like any kind of SaaS website, you go to hover over products. In fact, let me do it right now just to see.
Do it right now,
real
bro.
quick, because do you know what's crazy? Their SEO needs some work. When I type in Google DoubleClick, I'm seeing ads for agencies, bro. What is this? This is terrible. Bro, literally, it's not even pulling up DoubleClick. All right, do you know what? This is not even work. Essentially, we'll get to the idea. So there's DoubleClick. There's a two-way marketplace, and then so think of that. If you're an advertiser, you can go into that. If you're a supplier, in this case, a publisher.
So like Trung, like a Trung fans blog or Bilal's blog, your Arsenal review.
Exactly. So that's actually a perfect example. There's it used to be DFP. I think it's called DoubleClick for Publishers. I don't know if they've changed the name, but essentially think of that as I've got a newspaper, a digital newspaper, and I want to optimize the hell out of the yield I'm getting on that newspaper. So I'm going to tell it, I've got these 10 ad slots, and I want you to optimize and basically control who shows up on these spaces, and I want to make sure that I earn the most as a publisher. So there's whole teams that their whole job is to work with those publishers and to help them basically make more money as a publisher. And then on the flip side, there's the buy side, which are people, you know, effectively buying, you know, the same way a stock market does, right? Like if you worked in finance for a bit, you know, there's a buy side, sell side. It's very similar to that.
I love that. And how involved were you in any of that, whether in your agency work or with
Not really, because mine was normally on the ad side. I think I installed it once for the Arsenal site just to kind of see how it works. But
that.
honestly, I wish I knew about it when I was doing it properly, because I would have actually made a little bit more money. But it's really
Google,
when you're getting millions and millions of impressions, it makes a difference.
Like,
you know?
like a newspaper, for example, that you mentioned, like a
Yeah,
popular newspaper.
or like blogs and stuff. But it's just think of it as like software to control your ad inventory. So I would literally, but when I did it, I manually, like I used to sell banners manually in early 2000. So it was, but that's very.
Does it also help
right?
you make the DoubleClick help you make the banners?
They probably have tools like that, but it's more so about the inventory itself. So just think of like, I can say, if I logged in as a publisher, I could say, for all my impressions that I'm serving, I want to, you know, you basically manage the buyers. So there's different types of buyers, but there's someone who says, I want to buy 10 million impressions from you direct. You could plug that in. You can also say, well, all the remnant inventory, whatever's left over, I want to sell that on the ad exchange. That's normally what happens. So think of like, here's an example, New York Times. New York Times, or like the big publishers, they are big enough that they have a sales team and they can sell premium inventory. So let's just say, to make the numbers easy, let's say they have 1 million impressions a day. Obviously, it's way more than that, but let's just say it's 1 million. They will say, well, we're confident we can sell 70, 80% of that just from our sales team, from all these big brands. They're going to pay a massive premium. And so those might include, you know, the banner ads, but they're probably often like takeovers, or that, you know, they're more involved. And so that's like the equivalent of buying the middle page in a magazine, or, you know, a 4-page ad in the New York Times in a paper format. Then you've got 20% of your inventory left. And you're like, well, I don't want that wasted impression just to make me zero money. That's where you would normally plug into something like this. And you would then say, hey, Google, find me advertisers who want to pay for this inventory, and basically optimize that to make the most money for me. And also think of, as a publisher like New York Times, you want to add controls, right? You don't want some crazy ad showing.
Yeah, you don't want to.
So you can add controls.
You don't want to show up at trunkstunner.blogspot, which used to be a thing.
Exactly. So as a publisher, you can add essentially like safe lists. You can say, I don't want to have these types of ads in there. Gambling,
this makes
for example.
a lot of sense. So the publisher Publisher provides the inventory. The ad exchange has buyers, people bidding on that inventory.
Exactly, trying to buy that inventory. Yeah.
So I'm gonna give one fact, and then I want to talk about why this was deemed illegal, and I'd like your thoughts on it. So the fact that I want to bring up was, and tell me if this jives with what you know. So Google's entire revenue last year is about, I'm seeing here, 350 bill.
Yeah, I'm seeing
not 350 mil. People, if you heard 350, you should have decided what unit was after. Yeah.
That's crazy.
I don't need 350. I don't need to say what the unit is afterwards. 10% of that is display ads. So majority is still search, right? We have to remember, Google's search business is still the bread and butter.
I've got it here though, actually. If this is correct from ChatGPT, it's saying Google search is 56%.
Okay, and then
because I think when we hear the overall number, people often say 90%. They're saying ads, but search is just only a part.
Hold on.
Of
so
one.
what is Okay, I get it. So what about display ads? About 10% of their revenue.
Yeah, it says YouTube is about 10%. Google Network AdSense AdMob is about 9%.
Okay,
again, this is on ChatGPT. I don't know if this.
No, correct, but again, 35. I'm not going to tell you 35 what. You figure, you finish that 35. The Google's doing 35 on this display. Not peanuts, right? Not peanuts. So still massive market. So their search business, which is 30 of 50 to Bilal, 50-60% of their entire revenue was almost deemed a monopoly last year, right? Yeah. And one of the remedies they want is that that Google can no longer pay Apple $20 billion a year to be the default. We'll talk about some remedies moving forward. They also want Chrome spun off, but we don't some interesting details about that. But clearly Google has so much market power that this ad network one seemed to be a slam dunk from everything I've read. As in, let me explain now why they think it's illegal. So Bilal just explained there's the ad exchange, kind of the stock market for ads, and then there's the publisher end. Apparently, Google basically made it that if you wanted access to the exchange, you didn't have to use the publisher.
You need to use their tool.
They kind of made it where they incentivized it for you.
Yeah, it makes sense. Like they want cross-sell essentially, right?
Yeah, it's like if you tried to go to another ad network, they'd be like, "Oh, so sorry. And it looks like in that case, we would have to require this new requirement."
You're not getting a Christmas card that year, basically. You know.
Yeah. Okay, so let me give you one. I'll give you one thing. It's like publishers who want to ensure they always have ads because you want to be able to serve, you want to serve your inventory, right? Apparently AdWords, so Bilal maybe can explain more of that. If you wanted access to AdWords, you have to use a Google Ad Exchange. So Ad Exchange is like, well, I mean, yeah, you're making me do it. I'm going to do it, right? If you're telling me that I can't have the fire hose of Google, Bilal, does that sound...
I didn't fully get that part, but I'm assuming you're saying as a publisher, if you want the inventory from people buying from Google Ads, is that what you're saying?
Well, then they're saying if you want to use
Ad Exchange.
Yeah, they're basically saying for AdWords specifically, if you want to use AdWords, you had to be on the exchange. It's like they're basically tying it. It's like
I got you. Okay.
You have to if you want to use this part of the publishing tool, you have to be on the Ad Exchange, which seems a little bit.
Got you. Okay. I didn't know that, but yeah.
Okay, so. Thoughts on
Wouldn't
that?
be surprised. Yeah, it sounds about right.
Wait, but does that to you sound anti-competitive?
I didn't fully understand if this is from the publisher side or not. So I would assume yes. My best guess would be yes, based on the way it's going.
Right. So I'll give you some reasons that people believe, and then obviously we got to mention Big Ben Thompson here because he actually had a really good piece on it, and it's about he had a good piece about it specifically because his whole thing obviously is the aggregators theory, right? Is like if you can get free, you can build an aggregation platform, you get free supply and then free users and then free publishers, right? You get the whole nine because you just built such a powerful thing. In this case, it's search. So there's the interesting part of this deal when we can wrap it up with the Google and the remedies that might come is there's something known in kind of commercial U.S. constitutional law as the Verizon Communications versus Law Offices of Curvis v. Trinco. So it's known as the Trinco case. And the whole point of this in antitrust law is that just because you've built a dominant monopoly-like service, you actually don't have to allow a competitor to use that service, right? I believe the exact terminology is duty to deal. And the point here is actually, this isn't exactly the same with the Google case, the ad exchange case, because it's more so like the publisher. The publisher is not a direct competitor, right? The publisher is like trying to use your platform. It's like a customer, but you're basically forcing it to use this other product if you want to use it. So the question becomes, does Google have a duty to deal in that? Do they have to play fair, right? Because you can't just whack a monopoly because they built a monopoly. Maybe it actually just is a better business, right? Maybe they earned the right to have a better business. Although obviously now we'll look at Google, everybody makes fun of the search results, which are getting absolutely out of control, right? Like you pull up the search results on Google now, it's offensive. But the whole point is, in the heyday, Google was just the beast, right? And did provide a better service. So what's interesting about this is Thompson's whole shtick with what he thinks will happen with this case is that Trinco, this could go to the Supreme Court to decide if that duty to deal, which is like, if you build a better platform, do you have to allow other people to use it the way they want? Or can you actually still have control over it because you built it better? That may go to the Supreme Court and be decided on. So I think that's interesting, something to keep an eye on.
Got you.
In terms of remedies, they want to spin off. They want to spin off. Mentioned potentially Chrome, Android, stop, and then the search part was cut these deals with like Apple can't get 20 bill a year from Google, and then the other thing that is already happening in Europe is in the U.S. they might require Google to provide like the billions of historical queries that people do like over weeks or months. Google gets to share that data, so it becomes less of a monopoly. Google's whole point, though, is like, that's kind of like proprietary stuff, right? It's like, you're asking us to basically white label our business. So DuckDuckGo is just going to take Google search queries and build their search network. Is like, is that really a proper resolution? That's Google's case.
Yeah.
The whole point I'm going to make here, and I'll throw it to you for any final thoughts, is it's clear something's going to happen at Google. I don't think Chrome getting spun off makes a ton of sense, because Chrome as a standalone entity is kind of useless. Like, who's buying Chrome? Like, who's going to buy Chrome as a standalone?
Yeah, it only serves the purpose of being
the Google integration, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So, but I can see the sharing
YouTube,
of search data.
I feel like YouTube could be spun out.
YouTube could be spun off, and it probably would be worth even more. Yeah,
it would be worth more, and it's growing. But then it would be kind of maybe a bit of an issue for the main Google part, because they need to find other areas.
They need all that data too, right, for training for the AI
and
models.
Maybe they'll still have a way to have a deal between them, essentially like a special deal. But I mean, you could make a big argument for YouTube spinning out, cloud potentially spinning out as well. I don't know how big that is, but I think it's
no. But something's going to happen to Google.
$43 billion last year.
Totally right. Other than the Meta antitrust case that's been brought, probably is not going to succeed. Clearly, Google's already been smacked twice, right? And something is going to happen, and we just kind of give some remedies that people are talking about, the judges have talked about. The last thing I'll add on this case, Bilal, and I'm curious on your thoughts on this, because none of these words mean anything to me. So apparently, some of the stuff that Google's done that's sketchy and actually has impacted the smaller publishers. So probably like guys like you with your Arsenal Review. So what they've done is this: because they make so much money on the large publishers, they've apparently screwed smaller publishers that literally have no choice. Like because isn't it that when you
what did they do?
No, it's like when people bid on ad inventory, you actually have no idea what's going on. It's a total black box, right? So apparently Google, because Google's telling you what the cost is, they're telling you what the buyer, how much to pay. Google apparently has been skimming huge margin from the buyer, as in they'll say, oh, this ad inventory is whatever, $50 cost per click, when in reality it's 35, and they're eating the difference. Do you see what I'm saying? But you would have no way to know, right?
Yeah. So my only thing on that is, if they're doing that, that's definitely I haven't done this worked on this stuff for like 7-8 years, so it could have changed. That should be a transparently known percentage share, right? But like whatever's being paid, it's kind of like AdSense. The way AdSense is, I forgot off the top of my head what the share is, like 60-40 or whatever it is. So that should be the same here. There may be cases where the bigger publishers carve out deals. Let's say Condé Nast, New York Times.
Okay.
Maybe they have direct deals where they're getting more favorable terms, which kind of happens in a lot of businesses, obviously, right? But I don't know if that's the case here.
Well, I'll read to you exactly what was written, and you tell me if any of this makes sense. So Google has done some sketchy stuff, such as first look and last look bidding. That sounds like they're advantaging themselves by knowing what the first and last, seeing before and after the bids, and they're manipulating margins to win desirable supply and making up for it by overcharging for less desirable supply.
Okay, got you. Okay,
You know what I'm saying? So like
to get like a blended amount that works.
There you go. So it sounds like some chicaneries could be done here.
Yeah, that definitely. What I heard from you then, I'm not sure if this is what it's saying, but essentially the favorable publishers are getting a better deal. Let's say their CPMs are higher or whatever, and the less favorable, smaller publishers in this case might be getting smaller. I don't know that case, to be honest. So who knows? I would say normally there is a lot of this is also based on bidding, so it should be auction dynamics essentially across the board.
But they control the auction.
Yeah, but you could argue that obviously as an advertiser, I'm going to pay more for premium inventory. So I'm going to pay way more for New York Times than I am Bilal's blog. So I think the problem would be
Arsenal review. That's on them.
There you go. Unless you're ahead of the curve and you should be bidding. Now, what could also be happening though, if they were actually directly manipulating that somehow, behind the scenes, obviously that would not be good. So if they were doing that and they found guilty of doing something like that, then that would obviously not be a good look.
Yeah. Thank you for the details, dude. I love that.
That was good.
This
that
is
was
the Bilal 101. Let's turbo through the OpenAI stuff. So this is relevant because I know that listeners love talking when we chat AI stuff, and we'll mention this is a couple details about OpenAI, which is the clear leader in the generative AI space. We mentioned they'd raised 300 from Massa, which obviously has its own red flags, but they got 10 bill up front, 30 bill by the end of the year, presumably. That's contingent on them converting to a for-profit. So a lot of drama for 2025. But Sam Altman, CEO, was at TED conference, I think 10 days ago or 2 weeks ago. And he basically
they did a live stream of his YouTube
talk. Yeah,
talk.
10% of the world is using ChatGPT, which is crazy. That's 800 million people, which means they've doubled their user base basically since we talked about the Studio Ghibli stuff. How crazy is that?
That was literally, like a month ago?
It was a month ago. It's insane.
That's crazy. That Ghibli stuff, it's insane, man. I'll be honest, I still use it the most. I do use Claude sometimes. I use Gemini sometimes. I don't use Perplexity at all anymore. That's been a bit of a meme as well.
This is interesting. Tell us more. Why?
It never stuck with me anyway. I remember it was just a little bit of a darling of the kind of startup-y tech world. And then when I use it, honestly, I'll give my honest opinion. I heard a few things the CEO said on a few interviews where I was doubting. I was like, oh, actually, I was a little bit cautious.
About the product.
I'm not saying he's done something wrong. I was just like a little bit like, it was one of the few things I might have known stuff about that, like it was talking about ads specifically.
Oh,
and I remember even just for example, and that like obviously incredibly smart guy, and I would never shit on someone building stuff like that because he's very impressive what they've done. But it started feeling a little bit to me like, I don't know what gimmicky is the right word, but just like, what is the real use case that's better? That's kind of what I care about.
Feature or product, right?
Yeah, feature
or
product.
Company. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, maybe they will do that. I think, they were doing the shopping stuff. I think they were doing at some point.
And they have a ton of capital to figure. I think they've raised.
So maybe they'll figure it out. But I do think if I was predicting, which is a stupid thing to do, but if we were going a few years out, there will be a lot of these companies that were raising at crazy valuations, taking in crazy money, crazy multiples, because everyone's sprinting to the finish line, or not even the finish line. This is sprinting to the like quarter way mark of the race, sort of thing. And so it makes sense. Like if I was a VC investing hundreds of millions of dollars, I would do that too.
Well, to your point, right? Is like the thing exactly what you said was so many of these features, and like even like we joke about the GPT wrappers, right? But like, a lot of people realizing the money in the AI space is not going to be at the model layer. Like, it's just all these models are competitive. And DeepSeek came off the top rope, right? They're just like, oh, we'll do it for like 10% of the cost. Exactly. And like, we'll give it away for free. So the model layer is less important. Well, it is in a business respect. from an AGI respect, it's obviously extremely still important how, your mileage may vary on how much you believe that. But so the thing with Perplexity and a lot of like, vertical businesses built on AI has always been like, will the next release just like, imagine you made a lawyer app, but then O3 comes out, which it did a couple weeks ago for OpenAI. Imagine O4 comes out and it's literally just better than any lawyer app you could have, right? It's just the smartest thing in the world. And it doesn't even matter about the use case. Obviously, it might not have the data. So like siloed data, proprietary data is still an edge. But yeah, the thing about ChatGPT.
When you're in ChatGPT, what model do you mostly use?
I flip between. I use Barely because I like to flip between the models. Barely AI, Barely.ai.
/NIA.
Yeah, /NIA. No. Yeah. So the research app I'm building, I use Claude Sonnet 3.7. I like to chat with that back and forth, but the deep research on OpenAI is fantastic.
Also, more than ChatGPT, you still prefer the Claude?
No, I say ChatGPT. I probably do more because of the research side, but also I use Grok a lot.
But I'm saying within ChatGPT, there's ChatGPT 4. There's O3.
O3.
O3 is what you're using most,
yeah.
Because it says user advanced reasoning. Is that it takes a little bit longer normally?
Well, actually, it's kind of in the middle ground. Whereas like deep research used to take it'd be 5-10 minutes to get a full like McKinsey type report. You can do with O3 now, but it'll take 30 seconds. But it's like 80% of the way there. O3 actually hallucinates a lot more. And some people are critical of that. They're like, shouldn't hallucinations go away? But the best thing I've heard, and I agree with, is like actually creativity is like the whole point is hallucinating. Is like you in the field of science, for example, you want hallucinations because you want it to go off. This doesn't mean that you might not want hallucinations for your legal needs, right? But and I'll jump on this. It's like Demis Hassabis, founder of DeepMind, now the head of Google DeepMind. Just went on 60 Minutes. It says in 10 years, every disease is going to be solved. Yeah, I mean, probably he's going to say that, but he just won a Nobel Prize in chemistry, and he's at the forefront of this.
Right?
But the whole point is hallucinating for certain tasks is important. But the whole point we wanted to bring up ChatGPT, you mentioned it, and now it has memory.
Yeah.
And so I want to do two things with this. I want to say what that means, how Bilal's been using it, because you had mentioned it. So the memory thing's big, right? You can toggle it on or off, but ChatGPT now will keep every instance of your chat, and the AI can reference back to what you said 6 months ago, 12 months ago. And I'll give you the pro and the con of this. The pro is obvious. Lock-in, right?
I was going to say, there's finally a moat.
Right?
Real moat.
It's a moat. If you're chatting with something, you're locked into that. You're going to want, some people want, maybe some won't. And this goes to the con. The pro is for the people that want a long history that you've gone back and forth
it's on. It's like a private,
it's your true, PA
assistant.
Right?
Yeah.
Assistant, your gigabrain assistant.
But it also knows everything about you, and that's the downside.
Which is kind of scary, but it goes to the other side. The con is this. Some people don't want that, right? It's like, look at how you interact on the internet. Like my X personality, I mean, it's pretty similar to my LinkedIn personality, but it's not the same in all my group chats, right? It's like people had different personalities. And most people in life just have different personalities. It's like you don't want the one personality to rule all. And maybe you don't want ChatGPT to just be everything, right? And that actually could be, I wouldn't say negative ChatGPT, it is a moat, but what could be signaling is we actually don't know what to do next. We're just going to launch the moat. Like the moat's launched. We think this is the highest value thing we can do. We don't know if we can create separate personalities for AIs. But man, they might even just do that, right? It's like, here, you can have 3 different personalities within ChatGPT. Just if you want to do different things and different moods, you change between chats. But anyways, Bilal, tell us about the memory, how it's changed for you.
Yeah, now I was probably doing something like this anyway, but I think it's better now with the memory. And I think when we did that pod, which people really seem to like, maybe we can do it more often on how we're using AI and kind of document over time how that's changing. Because I feel like every month it's changing for me quite sick. There's maybe a new use case or a new way of doing things. There's a couple I mentioned. One is there's these really interesting prompts. I've started to collect some of these prompts in like a long note. Have you seen, or you've probably seen this on X, where people will say, ask it like, make an image of me, what you think my life is like right now. That's kind of like a funny one, and it'll often be kind of pretty funny based on like what you've talked about. But there's some other ones I've saved that are like, tell me, there's like a whole long format around, tell me the harsh truth I need to hear. Like there's stuff like that, which sometimes I do that and I'm like, wow, this is very helpful.
I mean,
like
would you
if
be
you
open?
respond well to that.
Would you be open to saying what?
Oh, I mean, I would have to find, like, that was an old prompt, but I can find the prompt that people should try it. And maybe, honestly, I was saving this as a list to do a whole episode on it because I think there's like 4 or 5 I've already saved that could be a whole episode. But so that's an interesting one. But specifically for learning, and I kind of mentioned this last time, the audio chat is so good for someone. I mean, for a lot of people, I'm sure, but for someone like me, where, as you know, a lot of the stuff I do, I listen. I obviously do read stuff as well, but I'm walking around. I've got a lot more time, and I like engage. I love like listening to podcasts. So what I did is I basically created a curriculum just to test this out, because I was trying to test out. Because this again could be a whole a discussion around like what our kids will need to learn in the future. So this is related to that. So I was trying to test, like, how much can this actually teach me? Like, what can it replace? What can't it replace?
Give an example.
So, for example, I was like, hey, there's, what I studied at university was economics, business, stuff like that. So but there's a course that's pretty popular course in UK called PPE, philosophy, politics,
PPE,
economics.
all the prime ministers.
So it's a classic,
Right?
So I studied like 2 of those 3. I actually didn't learn that much politics stuff. I've just picked up over the years. So I took the Oxford curriculum and I took a few others and I said, hey, create a curriculum based on these courses. And I kept refining it. And I said, actually, now make that 30 days for each section. So it's not like a 3-year course, but it's something
And it hits
doable.
you with audio every day?
And so, I basically created a 30-day, let's say the first 30 days is the politics side, second is philosophy.
Dude, that is sick.
Yeah, so then I've saved it as, what's the thing here called? Projects, right? So I've got a project just for that. And then what I'm doing is, yesterday, honestly, was the first time I did it. I said, all right, now let's kick it off. And I want to do a Socratic style discussion. So first, it kind of starts off, and you can adjust this, right? It's like the whole point is I'm trying to personalize it for me. So I'm saying, like, give me a 10-minute spiel on this topic for today, right? And so let's say I remember the philosophy one, like it's talking about like philosophy of mind or some shit like that, right? So it's like, this is what philosophy of mind means, and here's a few of the philosophers that are famous in this, and here's some of their key ideas. So for me, because I've already studied that at university, I don't need 3 months of learning. I kind of need like a refresher, right? So it works for that. And then I can say, actually, I've heard the idea, but can you give me another example? Or like, let's say I was doing the politics one yesterday, and it was talking about international relations. This is stuff I don't know. I never really did academic study of that. And it would explain an example of like representation. And I was like, what does that actually mean in practice? And can you give me examples where smaller nations were represented at a global stage and something actually passed? And it gave me like 2 examples. I was like, actually, that's good. You said US or UK, but what about smaller nations? And so you can just keep asking very specific questions until I got the point. Yeah. I was like, that's actually great. Now, by the end of it, I had 5 different examples, like Costa Rica, Botswana, like different stuff like that.
This is an impressive use, man.
Yeah, and then the last thing I'll say is, when I was doing it, that particular area, imagine that's like a personalized tutor. I said, okay, well, make sure you remember that part, because I'm going to need a cheat sheet at the end of this call, and I need basically notes so I can like save them and go back to them in the future. And after I did that, it gave me all the notes, like a summary of what we discussed, and I saved that. And I was like, man, if I was a student and I was like trying to learn this stuff, this would be such an incredible tool. And outside of that, if you're someone who, wants to learn about a new topic, about ad exchange or, whatever else you're like preparing for your work related stuff, it's an incredible way to learn, man. And like the interactive style for me is just such a unique way of like asking a specific question. It's like having a personal tutor who knows all that information. Now, obviously, there's some things they're not going to replace that are still better in real life, but there were certain things I actually noticed that I would be embarrassed in the class to ask that many questions.
Yeah.
And it was one-on-one. It's not 30 people, 50 people. It's just me and this computer talking, and it has all the world's information.
This comes the memory part, right? Now you get to remember this. Like, would you say there's a lock-in now?
Definitely, because the longer I use it, the more I'm like, well, there's this whole history here, and I don't want to have to switch that over. And so that was just, honestly, I was mostly doing it to test it out, but really cool use case.
Dude, that is awesome. And like you said, people, listeners, we might just have to change this entire show to NAI. All right, we're done.
There you go.
We're not artificial intelligence. That's what we're calling it.
Oh,
right?
that's great.
No, it's because what's funny is that people loved AI chat because obviously
that's what's happening, man. We're all struggling to figure out what's happening. So yeah, if we can share the things we're doing, I'd love to hear people's advice, not AI. As well.
Dude, that'd be pretty funny actually. Pivoting from crypto to AI.
That would be great.
The running joke about all the VCs. But but Bilal, let's do this.
Yeah, we got to do a second.
Let's wrap up with the. You know what? Let's just wrap. That's beautiful. We're gonna talk about. Yeah, that's perfect. We don't have to talk about windsurf.
Let us know what you're using it for, and we'll keep sharing those. Hopefully that was helpful for you guys.
Yeah, we're heading to our second record now, so you guys have content. Peace.
Cheers. Bye-bye. Yo, you need a break or you should just keep going?
Let me take a whiz.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Bye.